I was working and doing what I could to basically fund my addiction. Any penny that I made would go towards alcohol and drugs. 3 weeks prior to me entering into treatment, I received my first DUI. 1 week after getting my DUI, I totaled my car. And then exactly 1 week after that, I got fired from my job. The ironic thing is that my dad was the one that fired me. My dad was the one that called me and said, Tom, we don't know what to do with you. Nobody knows what to do with you. And you no longer have a place to work, and you no longer have a place to stay. I was sitting on the couch just like I am now and just didn't know what to do. And ultimately, everything came crashing. And I was afforded the opportunity to go to treatment. And that's what I did. Getting on the airplane was probably the hardest thing that I ever had to do in my life. Hang on. Okay.
Action.
My name's Tom, and this is my story. I grew up in a small town outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it was very small. Everybody knew everybody. There was only a couple of red lights, and that was kind of that's how small it was. And everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew everybody's business. And prior that, it's been me and my dad my whole entire life. My mom left when I was 2, and she took my sister with her. My sister is a year younger than me. And so with that being said, me and my dad, my whole entire life, he did as best he could with what he had, raising me as a single father. And so we went into elementary school, high school, and I made friends with a lot of people. So I was always very outgoing, and I think I used that to my advantage. I can fit into any crowd. But at some point in time, I did find more comfort in the more rebellious crowd. And I found myself at 16 years old, right about when I got my driver's license, is when things really my addiction started to set in. But it was always doing what I could to just have fun. And fun for me at that age had developed into smoking weed, drinking on occasion, and get out of school and party. But it affected me in a way that I noticed it really didn't affect my other friends. And that was not an everyday occurrence, but probably 2 to 3 times out of the week that would happen. And some of my friends at that time, as they grew older, they got more mature, and I found myself just getting deeper and deeper in the comfort of what drugs and alcohol did for me. So throughout that time, again, my dad was a single father, and there really wasn't a lot of relationship there. My dad had to work. He had to put food on the table. He had to keep a roof over our head. And I, in turn, got to do whatever I really wanted to. As long as I didn't hurt myself or hurt anybody else, it was kind of okay. At 18 years old, I managed to graduate high school, and I was afforded the opportunity to go to school to work on cars and become an auto mechanic, and ultimately that's what I chose to do. All the while going to school to work on cars and learning that trade, my drinking never stopped. If anything, it escalated, and it started to become more and more unmanageable. But I, again, somehow managed to get through school. And I had a job working next to my father, working on cars, but never could I ever not drink. And by 18, I was drinking probably 5 days out of the week. And by 20, I was drinking every day. The friendships that I developed from the time I graduated high school until the time I finally decided to get sober, they constantly changed. Because I always found myself finding the friends that could drink as much as me or a little bit more. Because if I hung around people that drank a little bit more than me, I wasn't that bad. And that was the pattern for me for 8 years. The friends that I graduated with, they went on their way. Some of them went to college. Some of them had careers. They built families. They did very well for themselves. Some of them did the exact opposite and became alcoholics and just partied and didn't really mature, I guess. And that was who I was. My friends changed. And that was a pattern for me. At 22 years old is really when my drinking had started affecting really any meaningful relationship I had in my life. I had dated a girl from 18 to about 22, and it was what I thought was a very good relationship. It was somebody that at that time I loved, and I imagined myself with her for a long time, and she broke up with me. And she said, I'm not going to deal with your drinking. And me, I'm like, That was the very first time that I started to have an understanding as to how my drinking was impacting other people. From there, I started recognizing it was affecting everybody in my life. Because now I'm out drinking them. I am the one drinking more than them. So therefore I need to find people that drink more than me, and my friends would change. And those relationships were in the past. And ultimately, the relationships that I had at my employer, those were severely strained. I was now a liability to them. I was no longer an asset. I was a severe liability. And ultimately, they would distance themselves from me. And ultimately, I was alone and had nowhere to turn. My dad, throughout this whole entire process, is, again, single dad, but I'm grown. I'm an adult. I'm still living underneath his roof. He is doing what he can. And I would get home, and he would just be in tears. He would not know what to do. He didn't know how to handle it. And ultimately, our relationship was severely strained. It was filled with hate, anger, resentment, sadness, everything. There was really no positive things that came out of our relationship. And for that, I'm not 100% sure as to why. But I do know that it was me not knowing about really my childhood and my dad not being a part of my life. Because, again, he was a single father, and we did not spend a lot of time together. And he did what he could, but there was still a deep down, I think, I wanted to be more for him, and I never felt like I amounted to that in his eyes. And I found comfort in the people that I got along with the most, which were my friends that I drank with. And I would always throw things out at him and blame things on him and say, well, it's because I don't have a relationship with my mom, or where's my sister? What happened to these relationships? These are relationships that it was nothing out of the ordinary for me to come home drunk and get into a fight with him. And always would throw my mom and my sister at him. And again, knowing what I know today, he had no control over that. And it was something, I don't know why I did that, but it caused a lot of strain. It caused a lot of resentment. And I felt like at the time, he didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. The only thing I knew to do was to drink and drink and drink, and then ultimately start using drugs. I had no relationships left. My dad we were acquaintances at that point. We were more or less roommates that did not get along. At 26 years old, getting on the airplane was the hardest thing that I ever had to do. I was a grown man and I didn't have anything. I went to the airport and I got on an airplane and I flew to Florida. And that was September 16th, 2010. And I remember entering into treatment thinking I'm going to do 30 or 45 days and that's going to be that. And I'm going to go back home and everything's going to be fine. And I'm going to live this sober lifestyle. And going through the treatment process was something that so much started becoming revealed to me that I knew that this wasn't going to be a 45-day thing for me. When I came to the understanding that there's so much more to this than just the treatment side, but buying into the idea of sobriety and getting my life back and building these relationships back, when that stuff started happening and I started buying into that process, it started becoming relieving. And I knew, like, I didn't have to go back to that. I didn't have to go back to drinking. I didn't have to go back to Pennsylvania. And I don't know what or why or the ins and outs of it all, but I know that I'm blessed beyond belief that I had the opportunity to go to treatment. Fortunately, today, I'm 10 years sober, and golly. So here I am today, 10 years sober, I'm married, and I have 3 beautiful kids. When people talk about fruits of sobriety, it's hard to even explain. I have a house, I have cars, I have children, I have my wife, I have friends, I have all these meaningful relationships. I have a career, and it's unbelievable. And to even wrap my head around the idea that I was able to do this, and looking back at where I was and where I am today, it's a feeling that I can't even explain. And it's because I put down the bottle. It's because I put down the drugs. And I started looking at myself as somebody that has a lot to offer. I have a lot to offer people. I have a lot to offer myself and my family. And that in and of itself is a beautiful thing. And it's something that I will continue to have. And it's all because I decided to get sober.